Good afternoon, dear friends. Welcome to my not TED Talk on separation anxiety. Here at Pawsible, we have come to the understanding through some of our veterinary community friends that the separation anxiety of our canine friends is actually on the increase. And so I wanted to take a few moments and just address a little bit about what separation anxiety is, what it isn't, and what you can do to help your four-footed friends. First of all, separation anxiety is very common, especially in rescue animals, not because they have endured a stressful shelter environment, but because a lot of dogs are actually dumped in a shelter because they have behavioral issues. Now, that's not to turn anybody away from rescuing. That's not my intent, not at all. Pawsible itself is a very rescue-based organization. But what it is to tell you that the dog that you are adopting is probably fairly young and probably has not had the world's best upbringing. So what we need to do is figure out how to help these dogs so that they can be the best pet you've ever had. Separation anxiety is very commonly characterized as destruction of objects in the house, which can also be caused by boredom, so caution about that. Destruction of the house itself also can be caused by simple boredom. Vocalization, such as whining, ritualistic barking, howling, or yipping. Very commonly, and this is what typically tips off the veterinary community and people, trainers like myself, urination and defecation, as well as vomiting. Those three are only existent for the most part in true separation anxiety. You can also have extreme salivation, continuous pacing, or the flip side, complete inactivity or freezing. And generally dogs that do that will sit and stare or lay and stare at the door that you exited from until you return home. So let's suppose for a moment that your dog exhibits three of these. Let's say every time you go away, you come home and the dog has pooped and peed in the house, and maybe there's something chewed up. That would be a hallmark for separation anxiety. And typically what I have people do is go get a cheap, inexpensive wireless video camera from Amazon or wherever, install it, and then leave for generally about an hour, videotaping your dog while you're gone. That gives us a huge amount of information about what is truly happening while you're gone. And generally what we will see is the most destructive behaviors take place within 30 minutes or so of you leaving. If those destructive behaviors take place continuously throughout, or the dog is settled and then halfway through your absence decides, oh, I'm going to chew on the couch, that's boredom, flat out. That dog is bored out of its mind, and that's a whole different ballgame. But if he's urinating, if he's defecating, and he's destroying things, then we know we have a case of separation anxiety on our hands. There is a cousin to this called isolation distress. Isolation distress typically is not hallmarked by urination and defecation, although it can be. Typically what you'll see in dogs with isolation distress is that they just destroy things. Now, word of caution, if you have an older dog that has been fine his entire life, and all of a sudden, suddenly, he starts doing these things, again, separate ball game. Vet visit is warranted. You need to discuss those with your vet, because there's other age-related changes most likely going on. So let's move on with our separation thing. Schedule changes can trigger separation anxiety. Moving from the teenage years into adulthood can sometimes trigger separation anxiety. I'm trying to think some other things. A new addition to the house can sometimes trigger separation anxiety. So let's say you had a dog, you went and adopted another dog, or you had a baby, or somebody, a relative came to live with you. Those are things that could potentially trigger separation anxiety. Just because your dog has separation anxiety doesn't mean you should run right out and get another dog, because there's absolutely no scientific proof that getting a dog is going to, or getting another dog is going to help your existent resident dog. Sometimes something has happened while the dog was alone in the house, and that triggers separation anxiety. Things such as fire alarms going off, burglary alarms going off, attempted break-ins, an actual natural catastrophe. If your dog is thunderstorm phobic, a thunderstorm while you're gone could be potentially enough to trigger separation anxiety. So, how can you help these dogs? Well, first you need to understand that your dog is not doing this because he is mad that you left. I hear that a lot. That is a complete myth. Your dog is absolutely panicking because you left. Think of it in terms of a human panic attack. That is what is going on through your dog's mind. He has literally stopped thinking, and all he is doing is feeling, and feelings are neither right nor wrong in humans or in animals. They just are. So we need to figure out, as pet parents, as behavioral consultants, and as trainers, how best to help your furry friend. First of all, crates. Some dogs, if they love their crate, and it's a Pawsible belief that all dogs should love their crate, if they love their crate, then a crate is the world's best place for them, but make sure that they do not have any collars, head harnesses, anything like that. Make sure all dangly cords are up, make sure all curtains are up, make sure there's nothing covering the crate unless your dog prefers that. Generally, we can tell if a dog loves their crate by leaving the door open. And if the dog goes into the crate while you're home, then most of the time, and I say most of the time because we're dealing with a living, breathing animal and nothing is ever 100%. Most of the time, dogs like that are willing to accept going into the crate with the door shut. And when they go into the crate with the door shut, they should be getting the most awesome treat that you have ever come across in your life. And we're talking frozen filled peanut butter Kongs. We're talking bones, not baked, not fried. We're talking hollow femur bones that can't be chewed through or are not brittle and can't be broken. Those filled with frozen peanut butter, frozen yogurt, stuffed with berries. You can do all kinds of things, and if you Google online, there's a ton of resources out there that'll give you an idea. There's also a Facebook community called, I believe it's Canine Enrichment. There's tons of ideas on there also as to what you can do to help your dog enjoy being in his crate. Now, in this secluded kind of environment that we're in right now with our stay-at-home orders, you need to make sure that your dog has some alone time if you are generally working 9 to 5. Because I can pretty much guarantee what's going to happen is that if your dog is with you 24/7 and then all of a sudden you go back to work, your dog is going to have a hard time with that. So you need to try and maintain your routine as much as possible. Please let him out of his crate. Please take him on walks. Please have fun, play ball with him in the yard, all kinds of things. But make sure that he also has some time in his crate by himself so that he doesn't forget that that's a good place to be and that you're always coming back. Okay, so we've talked about crates. Now, some dogs with absolutely severe separation anxiety cannot be crated. They will self-mutilate trying to get out of their crate, and we've seen broken nails, we've seen broken teeth, we've seen scratched up faces, we've seen paws that have gotten cut. If your dog is one of those dogs, do not, under any circumstance, even attempt to crate your dog. I cannot stress that enough. You will induce a full-blown panic attack because your dog cannot be confined in a crate. It is actually scientifically proven that dogs with separation anxiety can be made worse by crating in some instances. So what does that leave you with? Well, if your dog has a favorite room of the house, you can try putting him in there. If that doesn't work, such as you've got scratching at the door, he's chewing at the door handle, scratching at the woodwork, destroying things, defecating, urinating, even when he's in that room, that is not an acceptable environment for that dog either, because it's still making separation anxiety worse for him. Remember, he's not doing it because he's mad at you. He's doing it because he's panicking. He's afraid truly to, one, be alone, and two, that you're not coming back. Now, if that doesn't work for you, they make these things called X-pens. And X-pens are basically playpens for dogs. They don't have a roof. You can configure them in a bazillion different ways. That may be a solution for you. You can look online, X as in the letter X pen. Take a look at those, see if there's anything there. You can give that a shot. Some dogs just cannot be confined. They just can't. And in that instance, you're going to just have to leave him alone in the house. Now, with that being said, also make sure that you're discussing with your vet the degree of destruction that is taking place. Make sure that your vet knows, all of the symptoms, because what we're dealing with is not just separation anxiety, but also panic. And those are two very separate beasts. We have to deal with the panic in order to treat the separation anxiety, because a feeling dog is not a thinking dog, and a thinking dog or feeling dog cannot learn. We have to get those feelings settled before we can engage the thinking brain. Generally, what your vet will do is prescribe some situational drugs to give. And I can tell you, I'm not going to name them because I don't want people going in and asking for these drugs, but I can tell you that you're going to have the best success with these drugs. One, pairing them with a brain engaging activity after they are given. And you're going to need to give these drugs about 3 hours before you leave. Even if that means that you get up at 4 o'clock in the morning to give your dog his meds, then that's what you need to do. Most of the time, depending on the degree of separation, it will also be paired with what we call an anti-anxiety or an antidepressant drug. The antidepressant drugs usually take about 6 weeks to kick in fully. And at that time, you may or may not be able to back off of the situational drugs. Every dog is different because every dog's brain chemistry is different. And I cannot stress that enough. In cases like this, there is no one size fits all. Even in the drugs that are used, there is no one size fits all. Every dog is different. So let's say you've got your meds in order, you've gone to the vet, you've got his confinement or not confinement situated, and you've looked at some different brain engaging activities and settled on some that he thoroughly enjoys when you're there. Now note that I said thoroughly enjoys when you're there. Do not try brain engaging activities for the first time if you are not home, because I can guarantee that a dog with separation anxiety is not going to engage in them. He's going to panic. Most dogs, another hallmark of separation anxiety, they generally will not eat and they generally will not drink when you are not home. That's typically a dead giveaway. That's also the case with isolation distress. So we have to be very careful in our diagnosis. And obviously I'm not a vet, so I'm not qualified to diagnose, but we have to be very careful in what we allow or expect from our dogs when we're not home, especially in cases like this. Okay, so when you have a dog with separation anxiety and you have gone through all of the stuff that I have mentioned so far, here's what you need to do, and I'm going to break it down in a nutshell. First of all, you need to teach your dog that it's okay to be alone with you in the house, which means that he needs to have a baby gate or something where he can still see you. He knows that you're there. You're going to reward him every time he's calm, even if it's for 2 seconds. Likewise, and I cannot stress this enough, when he's not confined and you're not training, you are going to reward him, get my words right, you are going to reward him for being spontaneously calm. So anytime he settles down at your feet while you're watching TV, you're going to reward that. Excuse me. Anytime he settles while you're cooking dinner, you're going to reward that. Anytime he settles while you're eating dinner, you're going to reward that. Now, a settle can be a sit, it can be a lay, it can be a snuggle next to you. Reward all of them, any of them. Whatever settle looks like for your dog, you're going to reward it. And you're going to reward it consistently for this first step. Now, when you have him in his room, dogs or gated away from you, you're going to walk by, and every time you walk by, you're going to treat him. First couple of times, he's probably not going to eat them. Eventually, his brain is going to engage, and he's going to realize, hey, she's going to disappear, and I'm going to come back. She's going to come back, and I'm going to get a treat. Okay, now we've gone from feeling to thinking. Once we cross that threshold, we can teach. Okay, so you've got him in his thinking mode. Now you can start to do what we call increasing the duration. So before he was in there, you were walking by every 30 seconds or so. Now we're going to start with increasing it by 15-second increments. Now, pay attention to the fact that I said seconds, not minutes, not hours, seconds. When we're dealing with behavior modification, successes are marked in baby steps, and they can be tiny little baby steps sometimes. So we're going to deal with second increments at this point. And every time you walk by, you're going to do the same thing. You're going to treat. When you can successfully have a calm dog for 15 seconds while you're out of sight, increase it another 15 seconds. If he can't be calm for 15 seconds, back it back down. Start with an additional 5 seconds and then move up another 5 seconds. You're going to set him up for success. And the way we set up for success is by making sure that your dog remains calm. Eventually, you're going to take the gate away. You're going to ask him to sit and stay, and he's going to sit and stay while you're out of sight. Once we can do that and he's calm, then we can do what's called uncoupling your triggers. Big fancy words. And basically what that means is all people, we're all creatures of habit. We all have our patterns. For me, when I go to leave, and see, I said the word leave, I generally use the words, I'll be right back, to the dogs, pick up my keys, lock the door, and walk out. Now, so when I walk out the door for a dog with separation anxiety, he doesn't start to panic when I walk out the door. He starts to panic when I pick up my keys, when I say the words, I'll be right back, as I'm walking towards the door, as I'm walking to the door. All of those things are ratcheting up his panic level to the point where he cannot think by the time I have walked out that door. So what we're going to do is we're going to randomly pick up our keys, but we're not going to leave. Or we're going to say, I'll be right back, but we're not going to leave. We're going to go sit down on the couch and we're going to watch TV. We're going to pick up the keys and put them right back down. We're going to do silly things like that. We're going to maybe move the keys from their normal spot to the kitchen table and set them down. This is called uncoupling of cues. What the dog is going to come to realize is that just because these things happen does not mean that you're going to leave. We are working on desensitizing the dog, another big word, to these environmental factors that tell the dog we're leaving. Now, what I generally have people do is they'll trigger items, such as their car keys. If it's safe to do so, leave those in your car. If you have an attached garage and you can lock your doors, leave your car keys in the garage so the dog doesn't hear you pick them up. Just eliminate that trigger. If shoes, putting on shoes, is a trigger for your dog, put the shoes on and then take them right back off. Don't go anywhere. Or put the shoes on, go for a walk, come back, take them off, put them back on, take them off, put them back on, take them off. We've now started to desensitize your dog with these specific triggers. I'm looking through my notes. Bear with me here. Some dogs can't do this successfully. If your dog is one of those dogs that cannot do it successfully, you need to have a very serious discussion with your vet about what they can do to help medically. And then you need to get a hold of somebody like Pawsible, who is well versed in treating dogs with behavioral issues, so that we can come in and we can observe what's going on. What the vet is going to want to see is video footage. We're going to want to see video footage of what is happening while your dog is alone. We're going to want to hear a case history. So we're going to want to know what's happened in the past, what you've tried, what seems to have helped, what doesn't seem to have helped, what's made it worse. All of those things give us a plethora of information that is very crucial to helping us understand your dog and then helping us help you help your dog. Okay. That was a lot of information for a very short time. I'm looking through my notes, and I don't see anything that I have left out. So with that being said, if you have questions, concerns, you can always get a hold of us during this quarantine issue through our Contact Us form that does come directly to me. Our website is www.pawsible, Pawsible, angels.org. You can also get a hold of your vet. I know the local vets here in Findlay are great. We have partnerships with all of them for the most part, I believe. And if you need additional assistance, please don't hesitate to reach out to any of us. We will be more than happy to help. Again, if you are quarantined away from your work and you are now home for the most part, I strongly recommend that you practice leaving your dog alone for a while, even if it means that he's alone in his crate while you are in the house. Please excuse my dogs. I don't know what's going on out there. Because that's going to be very important for them to remember what needs to happen and what doesn't need to happen. And I'm going to end the video and go see what's going on outside.